if you do all of those things, I think you can be whoever the fuck you want to be in like 18 months.
Hey guys, welcome back to Be the Standard. This week we're going to be doing things a little bit differently. We had some scheduling conflicts and things of that nature, so here I am. I'm going at it alone this week, first time, so hope you like it. But I thought it made sense for me to address my story, right? I posted it about 3 weeks ago, put all of my stuff out there, the good, the bad, the ugly, kind of went through everything that I've been through, and then kind of the results of that, the good that came from all the negative in my upbringing. And, I had a lot of people reach out and engage and comment and, send me messages about, thank you for sharing. And that takes a lot of courage and, a lot of things like, I don't know how you could do that. And, I could never put myself out there like that. And the truth is, it took me probably 3 to 4 weeks just to put that post out there because it was typed up. It sat in my phone. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go that deep yet. But I also knew that it was only a matter of time before I went that deep, right? Because when I started this, the idea was that I would be fully transparent with my story. Eventually, I'd like to get a book out there. So, this is how you go about doing those kinds of things. And so I certainly understand when people say, Denny, how could you post, things that are so personal? How could you post, those types of things? So I totally get it. So I thought I'd address that today and kind of share, and touch upon, the why, right? The reason I decided to share my story and put, such personal details out there. And, it's pretty simple. I feel that, frankly, if you have a story worth sharing, then, it's almost as if you have an obligation to do so. And, when you're in a position like this, where you have a platform, you have a podcast and, you're on, platforms like YouTube and Rumble and Spotify, you want to be as transparent as possible and you want people to know that you're human. And I think that's a huge part of it. And, I think the real influence that you can have over people comes from being vulnerable and showing that you're real and showing that, you have just as many, if not more failures as you do successes. Because I think we see a lot of fakeness on the internet today and everybody's trying to show, that they're disciplined, that they're just 100% always on and they don't miss workouts, they don't eat bad food and, all of these things. And I think it's just a bunch of bullshit, if I'm being honest. And I think it's just more important that, we're transparent in how we present ourselves. And rather than present just this shadow of ourselves or this fake image of ourselves, I think it's important that you show exactly who you are and where you come from and present yourself in a way that best, shows exactly who you are and why you are the way you are. So, first off, I want to say that, you don't share your story so that people are impressed by it, or, you don't share your story to gain empathy or sympathy or, any of those things. You share your story in hopes that it'll help someone. You share your story in hopes that, it resonates with as many people as possible. And that's another reason why I decided to do it because, I'm certainly not the first person to ever grow up in foster care, right? I'm not the first person to ever lose a parent to AIDS. I'm not the first person or the only person to grow up without knowing who their biological father is, right? And, I'm certainly not the only person to ever deal with PTSD, depression, anxiety, alcohol abuse, all of these things that, I've dealt with over the years and throughout my life cycle. I'm not the only one to do it. And, the idea of sharing your story is to make sure that other people feel like and understand that they're not alone, right? When you grow up kind of the way I did, you feel somewhat like you're on an island by yourself. And, most people don't have that kind of an upbringing. So it's easy to feel that way, especially as a kid, right? You see your kids or your friends rather going through certain things and growing up a certain way and their family looks a certain way and yours doesn't. I think, it's easy to feel isolated. I think it's easy to feel like, you know, targeted or victimized. And, those are just natural things I think you experience as a kid when you're going through things like that. So, um, you know, that's just one reason I decided to do it. And I think another reason, I feel like sharing my story has been so helpful is the connections that I've been able to make and, being able to build over in the last, it's only been a few months now since we started this podcast. It's only been about 3 weeks since I fully went out there with my story and exactly, the stuff that I've dealt with and gone through. But we recently had a guest on. His name is Seth Gale, and he shared his story with me on sexual abuse, physical abuse, and all of the other childhood traumas that he experienced. And kind of right away after meeting him, prior to even having him on as a guest, was I felt like we had so much in common because of the way we grew up and the way that the things that we had to deal with as kids. And in meeting him and just, again, that networking piece, I was able to kind of view things a little bit differently, process things a little bit differently. And, these are things that I hadn't really thought of in 25, 30 years, maybe. So, it again, it's that network and it's knowing that you're not alone. So that's a huge piece to telling your story. And, with that, with Seth kind of sharing his story and us becoming friends over, this experience or through this experience, it's important to note that, you don't go, comparing your story or your past or your hardships to that of other people, right? I say it all the time that we all have shit that we've been through. We've all had to overcome something difficult. But I believe that sharing in your experiences and sharing, your story, it's a teaching moment, but it's also, it's an opportunity rather to learn from others and, share those things that you've experienced together. And because I did learn coping mechanisms and different ways to process information just through this networking piece of doing what it is that we're doing. So, I think that's incredibly important. So again, I think it's important that if you have a story worth sharing, then you have somewhat of an obligation to put it out there. The flip side to that, right, is again, we all have somewhat of a story. We all have, some shit that we've been through. So it's important that you don't allow your story to become an excuse in any way, shape, or form, right? I think a lot of times people sell themselves on a story and use that as an excuse as to why they're not, at a particular place in their life or why they failed at X. And my response is pretty much fuck that. You don't, life hits everybody and there is no excuse. And life itself doesn't provide you the luxury of blaming your past for your current situation. You got to figure out a way to get through those things. You got to figure out a way to understand that I'm in control moving forward. And, these are things that we see all the time, right? We see someone with a bad upbringing or someone who's been, subjected to X, Y, or Z. And, they have every excuse in the book as to why they are where they are. And, Mike and I have talked about this in a previous episode, and what that is that's the victim mentality, right? That's exactly what it's called. And essentially what that means is this is a person that believes that they have no control over their life, right? Whatever has taken place up to that point in their future is just set in stone, and there's nothing they can do to make improvements. It just is what it is. And that's the victim mentality right there. Is this happened to me, so I'm stuck here and there's nothing I can do about it. And we all know people like this. We've all been around people like this. And, you offer these people advice and they have every excuse that they can possibly think of as to why they can't do whatever it is you're suggesting, or you offer a viable solution and, they might say something to the effect of, well, that might take forever. Or what if I put in all this effort and I don't get the return back on that investment, right? that person is essentially just they're victimized, and they have that mentality, and there's nothing you can do about it until they make a change, decide that they want to make a change, and and until they do that, and until they start to believe that they are in control of what happens next, that person's a cancer. I truly believe that. And I've had to distance myself from these people, and maybe you out there have had to do the same thing with people who are just constantly blaming their circumstances as opposed to looking internally and seeing how things can be different moving forward. You have to understand that regardless of what your past is, regardless of what your story looks like, you're in control of your next move. You're in control of what happens from here on out. You don't have that luxury of saying, well, this happened, so all right, I guess I'm a loser now because this happened to me. Absolutely not. And another point that I want to make just on storytelling and sharing your story is the hard truth rather is that people don't really give a shit about your story, and frankly they shouldn't. And the reason for that is everyone has their own story again, and everybody has their own stuff that they've been through and their own things that they've had to deal with. And for example, your boss can't afford to really care or understand or process or care about how hard you had it growing up or what your life might have been like. And the reason for that is because they have a business to run, and they need to essentially just be focused on themselves, their business, their own life, because again, they're probably dealing with some shit of their own, because we all have it. And it's those real life scenarios that are the reason why we avoid the victim mentality. If you reject that mentality and move forward and drive forward with a purpose, your boss, your friends, your colleagues, etc., they'll have no idea what you've been through. And, I think that's exactly how it should be. I don't think, anybody outside the closest people to you should know your story. I think that, that's exclusive to the people that love you the most, care about you, and genuinely want to see you doing the best in life. And, I had so many people after I put my story out there message me on Instagram, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and just said, Jesus Christ, Denny, like, I had no idea that was your background. And they were just blown away by it. And, a lot of really nice messages about, I'm impressed by, the man you've become, given what you've been through and all those things. And those things are great. They're nice to hear. But, again, that's not why I decided to tell my story. I just think that it should be that way. I don't think people should know until you present it on a platform like this. Until you do that, I think your story should essentially just stay within your closest circle, and hopefully that's a small one, because I think it's best to travel in small circles and with a limited number of people who have that close access to you. So essentially, I decided to share my story for two reasons. The first is that, again, my hope is that it will resonate with people and potentially help. I want people to know that regardless of, what some dumbass like Andrew Tate says, that depression and PTSD are very real. I want vets to know that they're not alone in, that difficult in readjusting and dealing with those mental health battles after service. And I want them to know that we support them at Be the Standard, and we always will. And, to that note, a quick story, actually. I was talking to a buddy of mine just this morning, actually. He's a Green Beret. I told you we had a scheduling conflict, trying to get somebody on as a guest today. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. But so I reached out to him because he's a local guy. He's a Green Beret. And I said, hey, man, I had a scheduling mishap. And, I know we've talked about you coming on the show before, and just curious if, I know it's last minute, but if you can come on. And he showed me some vulnerability, and he said, yeah, man, I'm actually dealing with some hard shit right now. And he gave me a good amount of detail to that. And, obviously I wouldn't share any of it, but, I can assure you that he never would have been that transparent with me if he didn't know that he could talk to me. And the reason he knows that he can talk to me is because I've put my story out there, and we have this platform, and I talk about the things that I do. This is a guy who's a badass. He's been doing this country's work for a long time, and he's going through some shit right now. And I genuinely believe that he never would have shared that with me if he didn't felt like or know that he could do that. So that's just one reason that sharing your story can be so powerful, because people open up when they feel like you care and you give a shit and they can relate. And, he knows I'm transparent about my demons and my struggles, and he knows my story. And that's why he was able to communicate that to me this morning. And that's powerful. That's why you do it. That's why you share it. And, the second reason I shared my story was just honestly to get it all out, to talk about it, and to create a dialogue around, the issues that, again, I know I'm not on an island by myself. I know that other people have gone through these things. And so I believe that it's easiest for us to grow better and faster as a band of brothers and people that have each other's back in a community than it is to try to go at a lot of these hard things alone. We try to be tough. We try to be, Teflon, but we're not. We're just not built that way. I think you can be, physically strong, emotionally strong, and all of these things. But, I think it's easier when you realize that you don't have to go at these things alone, and to share your story and to share your experiences with like-minded people and people who have, maybe gone through some similar things. I just think it's so powerful, and I think it can truly make a difference. And again, I'm incredibly grateful just for the network of strong, hardworking men that I, now find myself in, right? And that all comes from just being vulnerable and sharing in those experiences. So with that, I'll just say, share your story. Let people know that you've overcome some hard shit and that they can too. And remember that the main idea here is to ultimately be empowering others. Never use it as a means to hold yourself back or feel sorry for yourself. Because, and I say this all the time, I can assure you that somebody out there has it a lot worse, has been through much harder things, has bounced back, come back stronger, and they're doing way more with way less. So let that sink in, right? And then try to give me some kind of a bullshit excuse because I'm not buying it. I truly believe that if you dig in deep and put your past behind you and focus on what's ahead of you, that you can essentially erase the past. Not erase it in the sense that you can't, that you're going to just, forget about it and not have anything to deal with. But you can definitely put it in the rearview mirror in the capacity of it's gone, it's back there, and now I'm going to move forward and not let that shit hold me back. But, again, create a dialogue, create a community, create that brotherhood. It's definitely hard. It's definitely scary. It has been for me an incredible experience to share my story because I know for a fact that, it makes a difference to share and to talk. And again, I experienced it just this morning to help a buddy out like that, to be able to have a discussion with him during a hard time and have him, have that confidence in me. Again, he wouldn't have had that confidence if he didn't know that I was out there putting it out there and just being real with people and sharing in, what I know and what I've experienced. So, yeah, it's just been awesome. And again, it's making a difference, but, your story may not impact everyone, but it can impact, somebody, and it can make a huge difference. So, lastly, I just want to say thank you for, your interest in my story, your engagement on, our social media content, on, the posts, the DMs that I got, all of that stuff, and taking an interest in, my story and your your blessings, your prayers, all of those things have been just incredible. So as always, I thank you so much for all of that engagement. And yeah, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So I appreciate you guys tuning in this week. I know it's a shorter episode. I know it's just me, but we'll be back to our regularly scheduled stuff probably next week. And I just really appreciate it. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and Rumble. And you can find us at Be The Standard Podcast on Instagram, Be The Standard Podcast on LinkedIn, as well as Facebook. Thanks again. Appreciate it, guys.